Thanks everyone for coming. Today I'm going to talk about how to take your existing side project, if you have one, and with some luck and hard work, hopefully turn it into a side business. So I'm Jeff. I've been in the app space since 2015. I've co-founded 2 apps in the health and fitness category, and I also support app developers at RevenueCat on the shirt as well. My first app was called Mealime, which is a terrible name, so don't make that mistake. But after a long time of building and trying and failing, Mealime ended up doing well, passing 1 million installs, 50,000 a month, and I sold the company in 2018. After that, I started Clearful, which I think is a much better name, so I learned from that mistake, and I launched it in 2020. It's been recognized quite a number of times, and our next revenue goal is 10,000 a month. And at RevenueCat, every day I support developers that make thousands to hundreds of thousands in revenue per month. So today I'm going to talk about the successes and failures of building Mealime and Clearful, and what I've learned about monetizing these projects along the way. But first, how possible is it to hit 1,000 in monthly revenue? So every year, RevenueCat creates a detailed report called the State of Subscription Apps Report. And the latest stat is around 17% of apps make it to 1,000 in monthly revenue, with a not insignificant number going much higher than 1,000. So it's all possible and not even all that unlikely. So moving on, let's take a quick look at a group of people that I think we can all learn a lot from, but it's probably not who you think it is. Pirates. So bear with me here. Just like us, pirates are constantly looking for treasure. And it turns out that the key to their success in finding the treasure was right in front of us all along. Their favorite word on the screen, R, excuse my pronunciation, actually stands for AARRR, or acquisition, activation, revenue, retention, and referral. So jokes aside, this is an actual framework created way back in the day by Dave McClure that he called Pirate Metrics. And I think it's a really great way to analyze your app business and improve what's not working. But first, let's just take a quick look at how all of these feed into what it takes to have a 1,000 a month and beyond business. So first, you have people coming in the door. That's acquisition. Some of those people are going to do the main core value action in your app. That's activation. This is the best part. Some of them will end up paying you. That's obviously revenue. Some of them will keep using your app. That's retention. And lastly, some of them will tell their friends and tell their family about your app. That's referral, which will restart the cycle and eventually result in more revenue. But before we start talking about acquisition, the first pirate metric, I modified it a bit, and I wanted to talk about a concept that I think should come first, and that's positioning. So positioning is, just as it sounds, how you position your product for people. Who is it for? Whose problems are you trying to solve? Seth Godin likes to say, what change are you seeking to make in the world? Who exactly are you trying to change? In my experience, it's a lot easier to sell something if you have a narrow and really clearly defined audience. And we're all developers here, so we tend to build apps for ourselves, and that's mostly what I've done, and that's totally fine. But we need to be really explicit about who we are. Zoolander doesn't know who he is there, but we need to be explicit about it. So for example, my wife and I created Mealime, and at the time it was explicitly for us. So it started us cooking simple, healthy meals for 1 or 2 people in 30 minutes or less. So it was really specific. And that positioning allowed us to use language with customers that really resonated with them. For Clearful, we also made it for ourselves. It's a journaling app for personal growth that includes both free-form and guided journaling. And just saying that, it's pretty clear that's not that strong positioning, and we're still trying to figure that out. So generally, for positioning, there are a few things you want to consider. The first is try to sell a Band-Aid product. And it's kind of vague, but it's when the customer has a serious problem that they need to have fixed now. And that's opposed to a vitamin, which is something that maybe you should take, but you need to research the right one, and we've all bought vitamins. But you can build great companies in both, but one is much easier to sell than the other. Think about the unique value you're providing that's different from your competitors. How do you stand out? So Mealime appealed to a really different market at the time that had a really tangible pain point. For Clearful, it's ironically less clear for customers. And this is something that we're actively working to make more clear. So the main positioning point I want to make is that thinking deliberately about who your product is for and what problem you're trying to solve will make every step later in the funnel that much easier. So I encourage you to pick one of your competitors and list all the ways that you are different from them. You can then take those differences and use them to communicate with your customers. So we've made it to the first real pirate metric, acquisition. Acquisition is all about getting people in the door. And it's so important that the main takeaway I want to make is that you should aim to spend half your time on this step. Gabriel Weinberg and Justin Mares wrote a great little book a while ago called Traction. And I borrowed this idea from them, even if I don't execute it myself that well. So I have a lot of trouble following my own advice here because all I want to do is build new features, as I'm sure everybody else here wants to do. But the nature of the app business is you really need a strong top of the funnel to make the math work. So, for example, typically 1 to 5% of people or downloads will end up paying you. And because app pricing is relatively low, a bit of math will tell you that 5 new users a day is just not going to make it work. You need to think about acquisition channels that can give you dozens or hundreds of new users every day. And you only need one of them to work. There's that quote that goes something like, more startups die from thirst than from drowning, meaning that many never even get a single acquisition channel to work really well. So you want to experiment with a lot of channels, but when you find one that works, just keep going with it. So I put together a list, a non-exhaustive list of the main acquisition channels. And the first important one, I think, is ASO, which is basically SEO for apps. So in my experience, this has become a lot more difficult over the years. But when it does work, it can still drive hundreds of downloads per day for free. So it is a really important channel that you should take a hard look at. At a high level, ASO is about researching keywords and trying to rank for them, just like it is on the web. You do this by optimizing a bunch of elements: your app name, your short description and subtitle. If you're building for iOS, keywords, the full or long description, your app icon, screenshots, feature graphics generally, and getting positive ratings and reviews from your customers. So ASO was the one channel for Mealime that really worked. We ended up ranking really highly for keywords like recipes, meal plans, and we had approximately 1,000 downloads per day per store that just came in every day. So it was the one channel, and we never had to think about acquisition beyond it, and it was a really great time. It has been a lot more difficult for Clearful. We've done a ton of testing and have only managed so far to get around 50 to 100 downloads a day, but it's not nothing, so there's something there. And we are still working on it, but it isn't likely that this is going to be the one channel that works like it was for Mealime. So if you haven't dug into ASO yet, the first thing I'd suggest is signing up for one of the many ASO tools out there. There are a lot of them, and they're all generally quite expensive, but they tend to have free trials, so I'd say just sign up for one of those and get started. Research your keywords and your competitors' keywords and try to find high volume, low competition keywords if you can. And then update your title, subtitle, keywords, all the text fields, your description to be more keyword focused and see what happens over the next few weeks and then just repeat. The next main channel is App Store ads. So both platforms have native ads. You have app campaigns on Google Play and search ads on the App Store. And the ads appear directly within search results in the store. And in the case of Google Ads, they also show on Google Search, YouTube, and partner networks. So the reach can be quite a bit wider than search ads. And I see three main ways that ads can help. The first is obvious, is acquiring new users. The second is helping with ASO. So ads that convert well give a signal to the platform that your app is relevant to the keyword and that thereby improves your organic ranking. And I still think maybe the most important benefit of ads, at least when you're starting out, is again just refining your positioning. So you can test different how different keywords map to different screenshots and assets and titles, and then later how those users end up converting to paid customers. And then you can iterate and better figure out what positioning resonates with your users. And this is how we've used ads so far. We haven't made them profitable, although they're really not that far off, but we have used them to test messaging and screenshots, and we've learned a lot in the process. If you haven't given ads a try, it's really easy to get started, particularly if you think of it in terms of an experiment in positioning rather than trying to be profitable from day one. Both platforms can automatically create them for you based on your listing. So step one is just make sure that listing is filled out really well. It is really easy to overspend, which is probably by design. So create a daily budget and start the campaigns. And then take what you've learned and optimize your main store listing and consider creating custom store listings for the different audiences that you've identified. And then same with the others, just try again. The next channel is content marketing, which is about creating blogs, articles, graphics, videos, podcasts, and so on, all in order to solve a problem for people while at the same time promoting your business. The key, again, to content marketing is knowing who your customers are, going back to positioning, and creating things that they'll find helpful. And this is actually how Mealime got its start. I pitched Lifehacker, which was a really big blog back in the day, an article idea. And I still remember the day it went live. We had over 4,000 people sign up for an extended free trial of our service, which was in the blog article. So it was a super exciting day. And after that extended free trial, our revenue went from $50 a month to $2,000 a month. So it was a big start for us. So content marketing starts with understanding your product's positioning and who it is you're trying to reach. Figure out where they hang out and who they listen to, like Lifehacker was for a subset of Mealime customers. It wasn't for all of them, but there was a big enough group there. And then try to get your content in front of them. So this one is probably everyone's favorite because we actually get to build things. Engineering is marketing. So it's about building relevant tools to introduce people to your app by solving a problem that's related to your business. It can also pair really nicely with content marketing because you can create the tool, and then you can write an article about the tool, and that cycle can go on and on. So a good indie example I see of this is Pally, which is a social media scheduling tool. As far as I know, it's a solo business, and he's created 9 mini tools so far that bring him hundreds of thousands of page views every month, and some of those people end up becoming customers. So to try this channel, I think the best place to start is to look to your app. Are there individual features that you can spin out into a little tool by itself? And if you do find something, try to keep them as simple as possible, because a simple tool is easier to build and easier to market, and you're probably going to be wanting to create a bunch of these. So following everyone's favorite is probably everyone's least favorite, PR and press. This is about storytelling and creating a narrative that journalists and App Store editors want to talk about. So I ignored this for a really long time because my impression was, the typical corporate, boring press releases. But I've come around, and I think it's really important for 2 main ways. And the first is it encourages you to always be launching. So instead of silently updating your app continuously, which is what I did for a really long time, try bundling features into a buzzworthy release that you can talk about. And second, there are tons of events nowadays, official and unofficial days, months, and holidays. You can create custom themes and assets for the events and give journalists a relevant story that makes their job easier. So a friend of mine is a really great example of using PR to build her business. Anya's app is Rooted, which helps people with panic attacks. So every January, she organizes her PR content schedule for the entire year based on those events. And throughout the year, she always has a timely story to tie to current events that she can pitch to journalists, and it works really well for her. So to get started, start with smaller publications and journalists and just build a relationship with them. Reach out when you have a big release or something timely to share, and try to be strategic about packaging things to look noteworthy, even if you might not think they are. Be human, don't spam. It's really easy to stand out by just being a normal person and not a spammer. Social media is next, and it has nice asymmetric properties. It's free to get started, and the potential reach can be really big. The core idea, again, goes back to positioning, because all the networks have different demographics, different messaging. So think of a channel that fits with your positioning, experiment, and just double down if something works. They also offer ad products, and one of the best strategies over the past few years was to get influencers, even really small ones, to review and post about your product, see which of those posts organically perform the best, and then take the posts and then put a ton of ad spend behind them. One of our competitors, Reflectly, was one of the first to this strategy a few years ago, and it worked really well for them. They had 10 million downloads in a really short period of time, and they built a really great business from it. But with every marketing strategy, once everyone arrives, it gets more expensive and less effective. But social can still drive massive outcomes, and I think it should be given a really serious look, especially if your product appeals to consumers. Most apps tend to, so I would think about it. So the last one I'll talk about today is community building. So this is about building a community of fans and customers on a specific platform where they hang out. And when you do it right, you give these early customers a voice in building your product, and they give you loyalty, they refer to their friends and family, and they give you just great advice about what to build. So Dan and Anna are friends of mine, and they have a meal planning app, so sounds familiar, but this one is really specific and well-positioned to women in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, helping them to lose weight and lower their blood sugar. So really specific positioning, and they've chosen the right platform. It's obviously Facebook, because this is where their customers hang out now. So a few core takeaways for acquisition. The first is that most businesses never really get a single channel to work well. So you only really need one to build a great business. So while we all love to build things, try to make it a goal, even if you don't reach it, of spending half of your time on acquisition. And even if practically your time goes from 0% to 5%, that's a really big win and a big shift in mentality. And don't forget about positioning, which will give you a good idea of where your customers hang out and which channels you might want to try first. So don't go at it blindly. I'd start with positioning. So now it gets more fun. Activation is the process of turning a curious download into an actual user of your app. This is where the aha moment clicks for users, where they find out what your app does and exactly how it can help them. And we get to this moment by defining the core value action. So what is the main thing that your app does? If users could only do one thing in your app to understand what it's all about and how it could help them, what would that action be? For Mealime, it turned out it was creating a meal plan. That was the moment they understood what it was all about. For Clearful, it's writing a non-empty journal entry, because apparently making a blank entry is not an activation event, as we've learned. So the general idea is to get them to the core value action as quickly as possible. But you do have to ask, are they ready to do your action? So I've learned from some experience that it's often the case the user isn't quite ready to do my core action. And if I push them to do it too early, they just tend to close the app and not come back. So this is where warming up the user with an onboarding flow can be a really valuable thing to try. An onboarding flow is a series of screens shown before the user is inside the main part of your app, and they're generally designed to reiterate the core value of your app. They can also get users to incrementally take more action in preparation for the core value action of your app. But they do introduce friction into your app, and the idea is kind of controversial. Some people say you should have as little friction as possible and just allow users to explore your app right away. But then you have examples like the ones on the screen of really long onboarding flows that clearly work because the companies have left them in their products. So I think the way to reconcile those two views is if the user feels like they're personalizing the app or they're learning how they're going to achieve their goals within your app, they can actually be excited to go through these flows, and it can improve activation. So I wouldn't count them out. So for Mealime, we initially just had a single screen the user saw when they first opened the app, but then we tested adding more screens, each which pointed out a different benefit of the app, and those were later followed by personalization screens. So the user actually didn't get into the app until they'd done a bunch of work, but this whole flow just made things better overall. In Clearfill, we had the exact same experience. We started with a single screen, and now we have 6 different screens that all show a different benefit of journaling. And it's also done a lot better for us in terms of users actually getting into the main app, the main part of the app, and doing the core action. And the point isn't about telling users about your features or just adding friction because it's the cool thing to do. It's about getting the user to do that core value action. So once you've defined the action, that's really all you should focus on at this stage of the user's journey inside your app. So to wrap up activation, you do need to have analytics in your product just to know what works and what doesn't work. So there's tons of analytics providers. Just integrate one of them and track those key events early on so you can later see progress or see regressions, which will happen, and you can run experiments based on the data. Okay, so we've acquired some users, worked to activate them, and now we can finally collect the gold. So there are 2 main monetization strategies for apps: in-app advertising and in-app purchases. In-app advertising is just what it sounds like. It's when you show ads from an ad network directly within your product. So very broad rule is these aren't going to earn significant revenue unless you have a significant amount of traffic already. So just for that reason, I wouldn't recommend starting with ads. I would strongly recommend starting with in-app purchases, which are where a user can buy a digital product directly within your app. There are several types of in-app purchases, the first of which is consumables. And consumables are just what they sound like, products that you can buy over and over again. A really common use case is tokens or coins in games. It is a really big topic, but if you're not creating a game, I wouldn't recommend starting with consumables. Next up are non-consumables, which are items that can only be bought once and they don't expire. So these are commonly used for lifetime purchases of products, and they can be a really valuable part of your monetization mix. They do tend to work best when you have a good idea of how long people use your product for. Otherwise, it is really easy to misprice your product and be forced to support these users forever, particularly if you have marginal costs. So you can see our happy pirate here. Next up are subscriptions, and I recommend to just start with them. It's the best way to get to 1,000 a month as quickly as possible. And with subscriptions, you also get real-time information from your subscribers, which you can use to improve your product. The typical mix I'd recommend starting with is a monthly plan and an annual plan, with the annual plan discounted 50% and including a free trial. It's a common playbook that tends to work really well, and I think it's a great place to start before you experiment. To sell our subscriptions, we need a paywall, which showcases the app's features and benefits in a single place. Designs can vary, but they generally contain the same elements. You have a value-driven title, key features and benefits of your app, any awards that you may have won or social proof, a plan comparison chart if you have multiple plans, language about plans and trial length, a trial timeline, which we'll talk about later, any reviews, social proof, and the most important item, big button to purchase your plan. Don't forget that. You also want to be tracking key metrics on your paywalls so you can iterate and improve on them. And the metrics I'd recommend tracking to start are install to trial start rate. So it really depends on the category, but around 3 to 7% is the median, but top apps are converting at 13%, so there's a lot of room to move up. Trial start to trial conversion rate. 37% is the average. Again, really depends on category, and it's something you can experiment with. Overall install to paid conversion rate. So a decent rate to shoot for to start is 2%. You're doing okay, but again, there's lots of room to iterate and improve. Time to trial start. So the vast majority of customers start a trial within 24 hours, but in reality, it's often within the first hour. So show that paywall early. And the number of times a paywall is shown to a user. So the main best practice I want to convey is always be testing. Assuming people are making it to your paywall, you can 2 to 4x your revenue just by doing consistent paywall testing. And generally speaking, there's a linear relationship between the number of times a paywall is shown and the revenue you generate. So because of this, consider showing your paywall as early as you can, even in your onboarding flow. So it's really common to hear stories of developers that move their paywall earlier in their flow, and they saw big improvements to revenue, even though they didn't want to do it. But I would suggest just try it. So I'm going to show a few examples of paywalls and paywall tests we've run over the years at Clearful. So this is the first one. It was a really long form page that talked a lot about features and benefits. And we iterated many times on this page, and it was a successful test compared to the first page, which was really bare bones. The next one we tried was a pretty radical change, and we stole it from Duolingo. And it's really interesting. They have a multi-step paywall, which is kind of counterintuitive because they're adding friction to the process. But friction isn't necessarily a bad thing, as we've already talked about. So here's the Clearful version we tried. So this was a super interesting experiment for us because it ended up lowering our overall paid conversion rate, which meant we were making less money, so not great. But it actually increased our retention rate. And the interesting part is it increased the retention rate, for users who didn't even end up converting. So they clicked through to the last page, they closed it, and they still retain better in our app. So really fascinating experiment. And the last version I want to show was popularized by Blinkist. It's called the trial timeline paywall. The key learning Blinkist made is that users feel anxiety of what's going to happen when they click the purchase button. Can they cancel? When will they be charged? What if they forget to cancel? So Blinkist saw big improvements in trial starts. And when we tested it, so did we. Trial starts went way up. Notably, so did trial cancellations and refunds. But they didn't go up enough to negate the benefits of more trials. So this was a clear winner for us, and it is currently available in our app. So the point of these examples is to highlight that you need to test your paywalls continuously because the results are not universally applicable across all apps. So I recently spoke to Curtis, who makes the Slopes apps, a really popular ski and snowboard tracking app. And he told me he tested the Blinkist paywall, and it totally bombed for him in his app. On the other hand, he innovated this, which is called a pay ramp, that converts really well for him. We copied it, and it didn't work at all for us. So if you take away one thing about paywalls, it's that you should really be testing them continuously because they're a huge point of leverage inside your apps. And don't forget to consider sales, as they can account for a significant amount of revenue. The typical ways to offer sales are abandoned cart, offering an incentive when users click to purchase, but they don't end up completing the purchase. You can do the same when they don't click the buy button, but they just close the paywall. Obviously, limited time holiday sales are really popular. Personalized offers based on user events. So this is why it's important to have some analytics in your app. And offering a discount or an incentive when users cancel. So under retention, it's just what it sounds like, retaining the users and customers that you already have. This means they come into your app regularly and do your core action over and over again. The best retention strategy is just build a great product that continually delivers value to your users. You want your app to have a great user experience and design. You obviously don't want any bugs, and you want to fix performance issues. Identify and track key actions that drive retention. And add features or custom content that regularly engages users. So the image on the slide is from from a recent feature we released. It's for Clearful. It's a weekly review feature. So it makes it easy for users to reflect back on their weeks with AI-powered summaries and insights. After we launched the feature, our users told us that they felt motivated to journal more and journal better throughout the week, so their review at the end of the week was better. And the data told us the same story. So we inadvertently released a feature that now is a key action that drives retention for our app. So next up, you want to listen to and talk to your users. Give them a way to contact you. This is something we've always done, but a lot of apps don't do, and I would encourage you to do it, is just provide great customer support. It goes a long way, and people are genuinely surprised and thankful when they see a real person on the end of the line, and they don't expect it in apps, so you can really differentiate yourself. Make it easy for these users to share feedback in a less direct way as well. We have forms throughout our app that they can just leave feedback, and we'll get back to them later. You should listen to the feedback, but you shouldn't necessarily build exactly what users are asking for, because sometimes the real problem is buried within their proposed solution, and they do tend to offer solutions and not problems. So next, you can nudge and remind users with timely messages. This includes push notifications, in-app messages, email campaigns, but I'd really highlight the importance of push notifications specifically. They can be really effective, and they're really easy to set up and cost-effective to run. Another common retention tactic is to reward loyal and engaged users. So you shouldn't just throw gamification in every app, but you might want to consider how streaks, awards, and exclusivity can be tailored to your app. So for example, Clearful has a streak feature, but we didn't want to be too prescriptive about users having to journal every single day. So we built both a daily and a weekly streak, which helps users stay engaged on a cadence that works better for them. And lastly, mitigation offers are a last resort. They don't really directly address real retention issues, but they can encourage users to give your app another shot. So let's talk about what happens when users don't retain. In both of the examples here, a business earns $1,000 a month today and has $500 in monthly revenue growth. The first business loses 5% of their customers every month, and the maximum size this business can grow is $9,500 in monthly revenue. But the second business loses 10% of their customers each month, and the biggest this business can grow is $5,000 a month. So these are super simplified examples. But the point is that retention largely determines the size of your business. It is really important to focus on once you have users coming in the door. So lastly, referral is when those happy users and customers refer your app to their friends and family. Long-term, you want as much of this as possible because referred users do tend to have better metrics all around. First thing, it's really easy. Just make it easy for users to share your app. They really shouldn't have to go digging to find out how to do this. Another thing you can do is push for users to review and rate your app, which also helps with acquisition in the stores. You can do this in-app after key events and actions the users take. Throw it in your app settings, add it to support and marketing emails. So when people email us for support, all of my replies have a short sentence automatically added to the bottom of the email, just asking for a review if they're happy with the support they received. And we have received a bunch of reviews that way. So it's a nice way to slowly get more reviews for your app. So I hope everyone can agree we have a lot to learn from Pirates. They have taught us how to position our products in the market, how to systematically acquire new users, how to define our core value action and activate those users, use subscriptions and paywalls to convert happy users into customers, and how to deepen the relationship with your users so they stick around and tell their friends and family. But despite everything I've talked about today, do keep in mind that it's all wrong. This is a framework, which is a simplified model of the world, so by the very definition, that means it's wrong. But that doesn't mean it's not useful. So feel free to mix and match all of these concepts, disagree with them, improve upon them, use them for your app. It is a framework of best practices, but nothing in here was absolute rule. So one more thing. We all already know how to make apps, build apps and make something real. But building a business requires different skills. And I've come around to the fact that those skills are just as important, if not more important, than the actual building part. Because at the end of the day, providing a legitimately valuable service to real people that are happy to pay for it, it's just way more fun than a project living alone on our computer or that can't be found in the app stores. So when you're deciding what to work next on your side project, just remember this guy. Thank you.